Welcome to another edition of our weekly webinar series, Starstruck. I'm your host for today evening. My name is Alok Deep Singh. I head digital for wealth and personal banking at HSBC India. Today we have a very special guest with us on the 74th Independence Day Eve. He is one of India's most celebrated and successful sportsmen. He ended India's 100-year or more quest for an individual Olympic gold medal. I'm sure by now you would be guessing who he is. He's the first Indian to have concurrently held both the world and Olympic titles for the men's 10-meter air rifle event, besides winning gold medals at Commonwealth Games, consecutive Commonwealth Games, and medals at the Asian Games. He's been honored with the prestigious Blue Cross, which is the highest shooting recognition by the International Shooting Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Padma Bhushan and Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award winner, Abhinav Bindra. Welcome, Abhinav.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Abhinav, it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. This is a weekly webinar series that is attended by a lot of our customers, a lot of our well-wishers, and what better than to have somebody who's done the country proud on the eve of the Independence Day. And if I'm correct, we are just about a little more than 12 years since you got us this gold medal. It was the 11th of August 2008. So it's very close, a little more than 12 years. So I mean, before I know we have a session ahead where we're going to be asking you questions, talking to you about your experiences, etc. But this is a question that I'm really tempted to ask you. This is something that I'm sure must have been asked of you a number of times. How did it feel the moment when you struck gold in terms of for yourself, for your family, for the billion people back home, especially in a country where after Olympic, we used to go and wonder every time whether India is going to win something or not.
Well, of course, it was the thrill of my life up until Beijing. It was 16 years that I had chased this dream, gone off to bed every night chasing this dream, woke up every morning trying to achieve that dream. So it was a matter of great fulfillment. I think that is one of the emotions that I felt. I felt a great sense of relief because sport is a risky business to be in. I think there is only one guarantee in sport, that there is absolutely zero guarantee for success. I mean, sport can never be scripted, but I was fortunate that I was able to achieve my life's desire, my life's dream, and of course, that was a result of a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication. An athlete's life is like a roller coaster, and mine was exactly like a roller coaster. A lot of failure, but it was about trying to deal with failure well. But of course, that moment was a great amount of relief, a great amount of happiness, the greatest thrill of my life, that I was able to shoot the best 10 shots in an Olympic final. An Olympic final is nothing but a pressure cooker situation where you have a lot of stress, a lot of adrenaline. And I was able to somehow find my calm in chaos, because that's exactly what one feels when competing in an Olympic final.
Wonderful. So how does it compare? I know an Olympic gold is beyond comparing it with anything, but I read somewhere that you won your first district level gold at the age of 13, which is super young. And how did it feel? How was the excitement? Was it different versus the Abhinav who was 13 years old, or the Abhinav winning the gold at the Olympics when you were 25 years old? What was the difference in terms of the excitement?
Very different. I think when you chase your first district competition victory or your first medal in your life, it has a different charm to it. It has a different thrill to it. It has a sense of purity to it, because once you win the district championship, the next thing you want to do is win the state championship, and thereafter the national championship, and then one thing after the other. Of course, when you're chasing an Olympic dream, it's much more serious. It is you have to be clinical about it. It requires tremendous amount of planning. It requires tremendous amount of work that goes behind it. But of course, every victory is special. Every victory is hard fought. Nothing in sport, nothing comes on a platter. And none of my victories, including my little state championship or my little district championship medal, came on a platter. It was fighting against myself, because that is what your sport is. My sport specifically was. Of course, we compete against the whole world, but in all truth, what you are actually trying to achieve and do is you're actually fighting against your own self. You have to try and bring your A game to the fore on when it is needed. There are many people who can break world records at home or in training, but the real trick of the trade is to really go out there and perform when that performance is called for, and to be able to perform on command. And that, of course, requires a huge amount of training, a lot of science, a lot of planning. And then when everything does fall in place, of course, it's a great feeling, because it is something very, very hard to describe in words. It is something to be experienced, but it is such a special feeling that despite all hardships that an athlete faces, despite all the failures that an athlete faces, despite all the challenges that happen in an athlete's journey, we keep chasing our dreams. We keep chasing this particular feeling of victory, even though it doesn't stay for long. It is something where you feel just in that moment, but it is a tremendous feeling. But I think this is also a right time to bring on a point that yes, an Olympic gold medal is a consequence of 60 competition shots and 10 shots in the final, at least at that time. But for the athlete, for me, it was not just 60 competition shots. It was about training for 16 years, day in and day out. It was about maybe 300 international competitions and flights that I took. It was many moments of feeling that maybe I can't do it. It was a few nervous vomits maybe before competition. So it was a tremendous journey. And when as an athlete we become, at least me as an athlete became an athlete who was very process oriented. And I really, the journey was the reward. And the journey is what is special. And now that I have kind of exited my investment of sorts, because I have retired from sport, I can look back at things a little bit more dispassionately. And yes, I do have a few medals hanging on a few walls at my home, but really what I remember with a great amount of pride and with a great amount of satisfaction is the journey that I had. It was about the training that I did when nobody was watching. It was about the blood, sweat, and tears that culminated in that victory. And it was about the relationships that I built alongside my career. I had the good fortune of building several relationships with my coaches, with my competitors. And at the end of the day, and I think in life, those are aspects which are very, very important aspects. And I was very fortunate that sport was my life's biggest teacher. And sport gave me this fantastic opportunity to live this journey and to build those special relationships, which I cherish and will continue to cherish all throughout my life.
Wonderful. What an inspiring journey. And when you spoke about those few medals, I think those medals are the pride of the country today. I can feel that as an Indian. So as we move on with the conversation with Abhinav, I want to remind all our viewers, there is a question tab. There is a chat window below the screen. Please keep your questions flowing. We'll take them, a few of them at a time. And I shall ask Abhinav on your behalf. So moving on with your journey, Abhinav, I know we are currently in a pandemic situation we are locked down for the last 4.5 months. What's keeping you busy nowadays? How do you manage your routine? Would you like to share with the audience something about what you're doing right now? We were talking just before we got in with Airbnb, you kind of helping athletes for the Tokyo Olympics. You would like to share something about that?
Well, of course, this pandemic is something extremely challenging to us all. But I am dealing with it by looking back at my life in sport, and my life in sport was all about adaptability. It was about learning to adapt to situations, which we don't foresee, because sport is like that. Sport is something which can never be scripted, and that is how I am dealing with this situation, learning to adapt. Of course, I run a business, and businesses have also been facing a very challenging situation and need to adapt their own models of work, and that's precisely what I'm doing. I also run the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, where we are working on several social initiatives to work on the entire ecosystem of sport. So that is something which is something very close to my heart and takes a fair amount of my time and effort. I am also a member of the International Olympic Committee's Athletes Commission. So that is another aspect in my current day life, which takes a fair amount of effort and fair amount of time. So of course, I've been super busy even through this time. You talked about routine. I think that is something very, very important when this is a disruptive time for us all, and it can certainly take a mental toll on everybody, just because of our inability to do what we normally did. And it's so very important to build some sort of routine. Even though that routine which we are normally used to has to be altered, or some sort of a routine of sorts really helps. And that is precisely what I did from the start of the lockdown. And that has really helped me personally to overcome this time, and has been something which has been very, very useful.
Wonderful. So we spoke about routine. I'm sure your journey of so many years, which eventually led to winning the Olympic model, representing the country in so many Olympics and so many other events. So how did the routine set in? How did you get started? I'm sure while we'll pick up the questions from the audience, I'm sure they want to know how did Abhinav Bindra look at shooting as a sport vis-a-vis anything else? How did it start growing up while you developed the interest in this game?
Well, it is a very interesting story because as a child, I was a very, very reluctant athlete of sort. I was a fat, podgy child, kid whose only talent as a kid was to miss physical education classes at school. Actually, early on as a kid, I actually hated sport. I was in boarding school, and I didn't really enjoy my time in boarding school. But I used to receive a letter every day from my father, and that letter had one thing in common, which was to play sport. Of course, I did not listen to him because I really struggled with the running around of sport. But eventually, I did leave boarding school and joined a day school here in Chandigarh. And I was introduced to my first coach, Colonel Dhillon. And I went to my first formal training session. And I fell in love with the sport almost immediately because I realized that to be successful in the sport of shooting, and my particular event in shooting, I had to be successful in it. I had to stand still, and there was absolutely no running around in it required. So that was the real reason why I started the sport. But of course, ironic, I became an athlete who was determined to make my weak point, which is my physical ability, into a strength. And ironically, over a period of time, I worked tremendously on that element as well. But in all fairness, I was not the most talented athlete. I was not naturally gifted. I did not have coordination, or I did not have a competitive nature as such. I had very bad eyesight. I had a zero sense of balance. And of course, I was not athletic. But of course, I did have one talent, and that talent was to work hard. And that is pretty much what I did all through my career. I just kept working at it and working hard every single day. And that was my life for 22 years. It was about putting my best foot forward and trying to be the best version of my own self every single day.
We spoke about target shooting, air rifle. It's a 5.5 kilograms of weapon. You have to stand still at the same place. you take 60 shots and you just inform me there are another 24 that you need to take. So it's something that requires such a high level of fitness, concentration, self-discipline, if I may say, and there is no room for error because it's bullseye or it's anywhere else. So if there is something from your journey towards achieving this, how did you, how was the progression to this journey? Is there something that you can share with our audience, how they can relate with it in their day-to-day lives, draw an inspiration from there?
Well, of course, it was a very long journey. I was in, I think one of the things what I would like to specifically talk about right now is, shooting was a very lonely sport, very solitary sport. But, I had one constant companion during my entire journey in this sport. And my constant companion was self-doubt. I was an athlete who struggled to self-believe, to have a sense of confidence. And I was always assailed by an immense amount of anxiety because of my lack of confidence in my own self throughout my sporting career. And, after, of course, I tried to work on it and deal with it. But after a while, I pretty much gave up on this self belief concept. And what I started chasing? What I started chasing instead of self belief was self respect. And that was only possible by putting my best foot forward into the sport every single day. During the course of my career, there was tremendous expectations, external expectations. But at the end of the day, I was only answerable to one person, and this one person was myself. Every single day I would look myself into the mirror before I went to sleep and ask myself the brutally honest question: have I given it my best shot? Have I given it my best this training day? And if the answer was yes, I always had a good night's sleep. And that is the attitude that I started to work with and imbibe in my life. And throughout my journey, of course, I started my journey as a 17-year-old competing at the Sydney Olympic Games, and it was a great experience. From Sydney, I went to Athens, where I faced one of the biggest failures of my life, where I went to the games in Athens and I broke an Olympic record. And in all fairness, to win a medal on that particular
Yeah.
day, I had to shoot 10 very ordinary shots in that Olympic final. It just happened that I shot the 10 worst shots of my life in that Olympic
Yeah.
final. So it was something which was heartbreaking. It was even more heartbreaking to learn a few days after that Olympic final that the floor where I was standing on had a wobbly tile under my feet, which reverberated every time I picked up my rifle. And in a sport which requires such degree of perfection, it was almost impossible to succeed. So that was tough. It was a very tough experience. But that was something, again, I learned. So there was a great silver lining in that great defeat and in that experience. And what I learned in Athens and started to imbibe in my journey was detachment, and detachment from the outcome. And there I went into Beijing as an athlete, totally immersed in the process. And I went into great degrees and made a lot of effort to really focus on small details. No detail was small enough to ignore. And I went into the Beijing Olympics completely detached from the outcome. When I actually won, when I actually shot the last shot of that Olympic final, I did not even know that I had won the gold medal. And frankly, I did not even care if I had won the gold medal, because the reward
Yeah.
for me was in the journey. The reward for me was in my ability to do my best. And of course, as I talked about chasing self-respect instead of self-belief, when I went into the Beijing Olympic Games, even before I shot my first shot at that in Beijing, I asked myself the very difficult question: that have I given it my best to prepare for these games, and have I done everything humanly possible to do my best? And the answer was yes. And I had already succeeded in my own eyes, and I already had my self-respect before I shot my first shot, competition shot in Beijing, and I was already a winner in my own eyes. And that was very powerful. That gave me a great sense of security in my own self. And that gave me the strength to compete, and the strength to be my best in the moment of truth. So it was a fantastic journey. I had a great. Of course, I won in Beijing, and that also taught me something. You also have to learn to deal with success. When you chase something so obsessively for a long time and then you suddenly achieve it, it also creates a big void in your life.
Yeah.
So I also had to learn how to deal with success, and that was very challenging going into the games in London. Um, and then I went into my last Olympics, which was the games in Rio. And to be very honest, those were my most favorite Olympic Games, the games which gave me the greatest amount of satisfaction, because I was challenged. I was challenged by certain health concerns and health conditions, but I had given it really my best to perform, and I had done my best, fought to the best of my ability, and I had such immense amount of inner satisfaction and inner pride in my own performance. I finished fourth at my last games. Did not
Yeah.
come back home with a medal, but certainly had my self-respect, and I had my fulfillment. Felt extremely satisfied. And looking back, sometimes in life, those are things which are invaluable.
Yeah, I know it was so much of achievement for the country. In fact, uh, we'll take a few questions. One of the questions that has come from one of our viewers is, what motivated you to continue shooting even after you had achieved the pinnacle of the sport in 2008? It's a question that has come from, I think you answered it partially, but what was, like you said, you achieved the topmost level of a game. So how does an athlete's life go on from there? What was, besides handling success, how did you motivate yourself for the next Olympics and the next one?
Well, as I already said, it's firstly a very good question. And as I said, I was struggling, to be very honest. I was lost on what I had to do. And my first initial feeling post Beijing was that I wanted to quit and I wanted to retire and I wanted to move on to my next calling in life. And in order to really understand what I wanted to do, I decided that I would go on a meditation course. So I went on a Vipassana course for 10 days, which is 10 days of silence and 10 days of meditation. And I go into this meditation course with the sole objective of finding my new calling and finding my new path in life. And I reached this course, and for 10 days, where we are supposed to meditate for 7 to 8 hours a day, I did nothing but think back to shooting and think back to on how I could perform better. And that was a great awakening for me. It was a great awakening to me that I was still in love with the process of my sport, and that really gave me that clarity of thought to just continue the sport, because I was still so much, I really loved it, and that gave me the drive, that gave me the renewed hunger that I was looking for. And then I went on to compete in two more Olympic cycles. I won several championships along the way, but it was really that understanding of the fact that I was so in love with the process. I was still in love with the boring and the mundane, because chasing success and chasing excellence is really about doing the boring and the mundane well, and doing the boring and the mundane consistently. And and that requires a lot of effort, huh? When
Yeah,
you're chasing
I
something
agree.
which is repetitive in nature, you really have to love it. And that Vipassana course, that Vipassana experience, just gave me that understanding from somewhere deep within myself that I was still in love with that process. And I came back from that course and I got going again.
I think that's where the whole passion comes in versus anything else, because that's the passion that keeps you doing even the boring and the mundane things in a manner of a process, because it's not the outcome but the process that really matters. So Abhinav, we have a segment during this which we called it the down the memory lane. So we've picked up a few pictures of yours. We found them. We would like to share them with our audience, and maybe if you could share some some anecdotes or experiences around them?
Oh, well, this is a picture I remember going into the games in Rio. This is in Germany. It was my Pilates teacher who, one of the tasks was hanging upside down like that. It's a strange picture, but
Yeah.
we talked about the physicality of my sport. And it's a sport of immense amount of balance, and it is a sport of a lot of alignment. And this is one interesting exercise that I used to do to really realign my spine every day after a long training session. And I remember spending hours and hours in this Pilates studio in Dortmund in Germany, trying to perfect my physical preparation and my physical preparedness for the sport. So yeah, it has. I have fantastic memories of these training sessions, and every time I had a good training session, I was allowed to go and eat a piece of cake because the neighboring shop was a bakery.
Wonderful. Let's go to the next one, please.
Yes, this is a picture. As I said, went into great lengths to prepare for the Olympics, and this was me doing getting my brain mapped while I was actually
Wow.
competing. So I was in a sports science. I think this particular picture is from a sports science institute in South Africa, where I shot about 2,000 shots, and what they were doing was analyzing my brain activity. And once we really we figured out the data of these 2,000 shots, we found a particular pattern that when I was shooting really well, certain parts of my brain had certain activity. And through technology and through science, we were able to train my brain to be in that mindset, to have that particular brain activity. So there was a great amount of science that was also attached to my preparation. This was, of course, part of my mental preparation, and had a tremendous positive impact into my performance. I remember spending hours and hours doing this training. I used to make several trips to South Africa, and a makeshift range was created in my trainer's mother's home in her basement. And I think I made 10 trips to South Africa, and I never got to see anything about South Africa apart from this basement.
It's such a beautiful country, but there is so much of science, I think, in what you do. Let's go ahead. This one, I think, is probably, I think, where you're much younger. So,
Yes, on the left is my first coach, Colonel Dhillon. Of course, he's the man who initiated me into the sport. He taught me the importance of working hard. He taught me the importance of integrity, and he taught me the importance of pushing yourself to the limit every day. And he is the man who brought me into the sport. This is, I think, in the year 1997 or somewhere around then. This was my first national games, which
national
were held
games.
in Bangalore. And on the right is the then Indian hockey captain Pargat
Yes,
Singh.
Hargat Singh. Yes, and you all of you representing Punjab. We
Punjab,
can see,
that's
yeah,
correct.
we can see the jerseys. Let's go to the
Yes.
next picture, please. And this is you're doing
Yes,
some kind of.
this is an interesting picture. This is just a week before I left for the Beijing Olympic Games. This was part of a commando course that I did. And unfortunately, this picture doesn't do justice, but I'm standing on a
Yeah,
thing which is called a pizza pole. It is a pole which is about 40 feet high, and the circumference of this platform is the circumference of a pizza. That's how it gets its name. So you have to climb this pole and then try and stand on it. It required a lot of effort, a lot of mental strength, and it taught me something. It taught me how to deal with adrenaline. It gave me some confidence because I was never able to gain confidence through my training, through my group scores. Even though sometimes I was breaking world records, I was never confident, and I always had to search things from outside the field of play, which would give me a sense of security. And then this was a course that I went through just a week before the games, and it was one of my greatest days in my life. to be able to complete this course. It was something which really took me out of my comfort zone, but I was willing to get out of my comfort zone. And those 2 hours will remain probably one of the two most special hours of my life.
I'm sure. I think that's what is required for a true champion. And this one?
Yes, and this is one of my coaches. I worked with several coaches, and this is during one of my training sessions with him. His name is Uwe, and this is one man he's probably the only human being in the world I truly hate. So that's why it's a very interesting picture. I truly hate him because he always told me things that I never wanted to hear. He made me cry, and he pushed me to the next level. But I stuck with this man. I stuck with this man because he always brought in a different perspective. Sometimes that perspective was a perspective I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. It was a perspective which put me out of my own comfort zone. But when he advised me something, of course, initially I resisted it tremendously. But when things cooled down after a day or two, I realized that what he was trying to bring to the fore was indeed valuable. I persisted with him. I continued to work with him for the rest of my sporting career. It was a relationship which continuously challenged me. It was a relationship which continuously teased me. But I have to admit that it was probably one of the most valuable relationships that I struck in my sporting career. Of course, he taught me much about how to improve my own abilities in my sport, but it also taught me he taught me many things in life. And all my coaches, the relationships that I talked about early on, I continue to nurture. I speak to all my coaches at least once a month, even though we don't have sport in common anymore. But these are lifelong relationships.
Wow. So, moving on from here, Abhinav, I think you've had such a brilliant career, and sports is a lot about handling pressure, handling things in crunch situations. I heard in one of your interviews that during the 2008 Olympics, there was a snag or there was an issue with your rifle, and this was just before you got in for the final round, which you eventually won gold. So how does it feel to be in a situation when the stakes are so high? You're all by yourself. Is there a learning something which we can share with our viewers, even with day-to-day life?
Well, often athletes are, there's a huge misconception that athletes are some people who are mentally very tough, and we are immune to pressure and we are used to dealing with it. But the reality of the matter is something very, very different. We are as vulnerable as anybody else. I was certainly somebody who really struggled with pressure. It was horrible. Competing for me was terrible because as I already alluded to the fact that I was always assailed by a tremendous amount of fear, tremendous amount of anxiety, self-doubt, and all of that kind of stuff. So, but what I would like to talk about this situation is it is about two things in life, and two things which I particularly practiced in my sporting career to deal with these issues, because I never really had that confidence. The first thing what I really worked on was acceptance. We are often in difficult situations. An Olympic final is probably the most challenging situation that I would be in. It is a matter of accepting the fact that it is tough. It is a matter of accepting a situation which is challenging us. It is a matter of accepting the situation which is pushing us out of our comfort zone. What human nature does, and what as humans we naturally tend to do, is resist these situations, because these situations are uncomfortable. The feeling of pressure is uncomfortable, and what we do is resist it. And that, I think, is the biggest mistake that we make. And which that is a mistake which doesn't allow us to necessarily perform to the best of our abilities. So the ability to accept that situation is something which is very, very powerful, and that can you have to practice it on a day-to-day basis in all walks of life, in all spheres of your life. And the moment you accept the situation, however tough and however uncomfortable it may be, it just opens up your mind, and it just opens up your ability to again focus on the process and focus on the moment, and try and do your best. So that is something which I really practiced, and that was probably one of the greatest learnings throughout my sporting career, which really helped me. The second important thing what I would like to share is about really practicing gratitude. As human beings, as an athlete, I was somebody who was so privileged, to be an athlete, to have the ability to compete, to represent your own country is a great honor. And sometimes in life, what we do is we start taking the small things for granted, because our goals are lofty, our goals are ambitious, and that is a good thing to do. But in the process of having those high goals and having those high ambitions, we sometimes forget the smaller day-to-day victories that we have. We forget to be grateful for the small victories that we have. And it is really a matter of being grateful, celebrating the small victories along the way. And that again really opens up your mind and opens up your heart. And if you are able to practice it in every sphere of your life, it really helps you in these pressure cooker situations, and it gives you fresh perspective, and it gives you immense amount of inner strength to deal with whatever challenges that you may end up facing. So these are two elements which I believe everybody can practice. I think these are two rather simple things that everybody can practice, and I think they will be useful for everybody listening in. These are the two things that really helped me along the way. I did many things to work with pressure and absorb that, but in all reality, I never found a way to relax in competition. It was that can never happen. In a challenging situation, you will always be feeling uncomfortable. You will always be under pressure, and it is okay. It is absolutely okay to be challenged, as long as you accept that situation, and then as soon as you accept it, you just find a way to work with that situation.
You spoke about challenging situations. It's a question from one of our viewers, and I also read it in the book, A Shot at History. That's your autobiography. So you've flown in an F-16. So was it something that you wanted to challenge yourself? For most people, it's a fighter aircraft, but there's a lot that goes behind a sortie, if I may say. How is the feeling? It must have been an exhilarating moment for you, but was that part of something that you were doing?
No, it was just a one-time opportunity that I was fortunate to have. But of course, it was very thrilling. It was something again totally out of my comfort zone, and I had no experience in it, and it was a great experience. But it certainly challenged me. It certainly took me out of my comfort zone of thoughts. But I was fortunate enough to be invited to do that, and I jumped on that opportunity just because it would really be a spectacular thrill. It would really take me out of my own comfort zone, and it really did take me out of my comfort zone because it is a spectacular feeling, and it's something that we are not used to, at least as normal people. So it was a great experience, which I have been fortunate to have.
So tell me, after the 2008 Olympics, the next Olympics and the following one, you were the country's flag bearer. It's such an honor. Uh, what's the feeling like? How does it feel today to be honored being the flag bearer for the country? It's a large contingent that goes from India. What's the feeling like?
I did end up being the flag bearer for two times for the country. One was at the Commonwealth Games, which were held in Delhi. Spectacular moment for me personally, leading our country into the Nehru Stadium in Delhi. Being the home games, it had a tremendous amount of vibe. It was the first time that I was able to compete at home in that great environment, and to lead the country in was again a very special moment of my life. And similarly, I was flag bearer during my last games, my last Olympic experience in Rio. I always avoided opening ceremonies. I avoided opening ceremonies primarily because they take a large amount of toll physically. Because and specifically for me, because I was somebody who, my event was very early on during the games, and attending an opening ceremony is sometimes about 8 or 9 hours of standing around. You line up at about 4 p.m., and by the time you come back to the athletes village, it's maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. So it takes an immense amount of physical toll. So I always avoided ceremonies, just because I wanted to ensure that I gave myself the most amount of chance to succeed. But I did decide to do it in Rio, being my last Olympics. It was a special time for me because that part of my life was coming to an end. I was 36 years old, when I competed at the Rio Olympics. I was already an old horse, so the old horse needed a little boost of adrenaline, and that walking into an Olympic stadium is a very spectacular moment, and it brings you a lot of thrill. And of course, uh, leading your nation is even a greater honor and a greater thrill. Again, two very special moments.
Yeah, we'll come to that piece in a bit. Abhinav, we have our own version of a rapid fire. It's not a very long one. There are just four questions, but you need to answer them very quickly without thinking very much. So, Abhinav, as an entrepreneur, or Abhinav as an Olympian?
Oh, once an Olympian, always an Olympian.
Name the person who changed Indian sports according to you.
Oh, I can't name one person. There's been a culmination of many people's effort. It would be very unfair to name just one person who changed Indian sport. I think have the highest amount of respect for every athlete. So I would just say the Indian athlete.
So, and it's a time when we have a lot of biopics being made on athletes, on sportsmen, etc. So, which actor, according to you, would do justice if tomorrow a biopic is made on Abhinav Bindra?
Well, a biopic is being made on me, and Harshvardhan
Wow,
Kapoor is playing me. So I would like to give him that sense of belief, and I do believe that he would do justice to my role, because I've met with him a few times and interacted with him. A very internal person that he is, I think, can understand who I truly am, and I think he will do a good job.
wonderful. So coming back to the point where you were mentioning about your retirement, and we picked this up while we were getting into the show. In fact, there's a question from the audience as well. Uh, you reached the top of your sport, and you decided to retire. Why so? And why, if are we going to see Abhinav Bindra coming back to the range? Because you're still so young, and it's a sport that today, where you've excelled once, it's going to be not easy coming back to the groove again. But yeah, of course, you've been there, you've done that.
No, there's no chance of that happening whatsoever. I was competitive for 22 long years. 22 years in sport, in elite sport, is certainly a long period of time. And I had decided going into the Rio Olympics a couple of years before the Rio Olympics that that would be my last performance in sport. And, it was something that was a feeling which came from deep within myself. It was something that I had prepared myself mentally for. Funnily enough, the last time I ever picked up my rifle, the last time I ever really went into a shooting range was in that Olympic final in Rio in 2016. I've never been back. And frankly, I don't even miss it, because I'm committed to something else in my life. I am committed to starting a new life. I have to earn a living. The sport of shooting necessarily is not a professional sport. I have to put some food on the table as well. And I have newer aspirations, newer goals, something different to chase. Those were fantastic. That was a fantastic journey. Great memories, a great learning, a great experience. But that phase of life is now over, and now I'm embarking on a new life and a new journey where I where I'm starting from nowhere, but trying to build something, and that is exciting.
So today, as an influencer in the arena of sports, somebody who's member of the International Olympic Committee, Athletics Commission, uh, what do you think today? And I wouldn't say that it ails, but yes, as a country of a billion and more people, we go to the Olympics every 4 years. We've done remarkably well in the last few editions, but then why don't we win as many medals as we rightfully should in the Olympics?
Well, I think there are several reasons for that, and I think I won't dwell into every reason. But I think I would like to talk about one point, and that is uh, a culture of sport in our country. I don't think we've traditionally had a sports culture of sport in our country. We need more people. We need more of our population and our very young population that we are now to just play sport for the sheer joy of playing sport. The moment that number increases, automatically we will have more people getting involved in elite sport, and automatically our performances will improve. So, but the foundation of us winning more medals at an Olympic level is that more and more people play sport just for the sheer joy of playing sport, and that has tremendous amount of value. That has will have tremendous amount of value in just nation building, because sport teaches you so many things in life. It teaches you how to win, but it more importantly teaches you how to lose. It teaches you integrity. It teaches you how to play by the rules. And those are lessons that every Indian can learn through sport, through the power of sport to really help them in their life's journey. And sport can play a great role there. But just the point, what I'd like to make is, the moment when a family goes out to play sport on a weekend instead of going out and seeing a movie, that is the time when I will say that real change has been triggered. And that will automatically reflect into our elite performances. But that is the base of everything. We need more people to play sport. We need more people to watch sport. And we need to actively build a culture of sport in this country. The moment we do that, then other things will start lining up. But that is the foundation. We can't get to the top with a shaky foundation.
Abhinav, thanks a lot. Looking at your professional journey of 150 medals in a shooting career that has been so illustrious, there is a common that we can draw between HSBC India and you in the concept of something what we call as beyond boundaries. In 2020, it is a new direction that HSBC India has taken. It talks about breaking stereotypes. I think that's what you've done, breaking barriers, going beyond boundaries. So, and I know there is the Times of India has sort of quoted you as a man who changed the Indian Olympic history. How would you describe yourself, and then something that you would want to leave our audience with?
An absolutely ordinary person who just had the ability to work hard, had the ability to persevere and persist and remain determined to his goals. That is what my life was. I was certainly not gifted or really talented, very ordinary, but with the ability to work hard. And frankly, the shortest way to succeed, the greatest shortcut to success is hard work.
Thank you, Abhinav. That has been so inspiring and so much fun today talking to you. And with that, folks, we are coming to the end of Starstrucks. Abhinav has given us such a uplifting start to our weekend. This was a great episode today, and personally, a lot of learning for me as well. Thanks a lot to the audience for joining us. Do tune in to the next edition of Starstruck next Friday at 5 p.m. India time. Till then, stay home, stay safe. See you next time.